What's up, guys? Connor O'Hanlon here for another episode of the Greater Society podcast. And today is another monumental, well, yesterday was the monumental day, I suppose, but today is a monumental day for the program as we talk about not the first, not the second, but the third indictment of former President Donald J. Trump. Then we're going to be talking about Joe Biden's proposal in the reaction to the shooting down of his student loan debt forgiveness program, which well, I won't. I guess I won't. I won't load too much into this first piece here, but is insufficient. I'll say it is something, but insufficient. So if it was too long, didn't read, that's what it boils down to. And then last on today's show, so we're gonna have kind of like an abridged amount of topics, which is, I feel like just 3 is kind of small for what we do every week. But the third thing is we're gonna discuss my opinion on, in general, but this is based on a decision here, and we'll discuss it later, but of armed cops or security or whatever you want to talk about as the school resource officer in schools, and the benefits, the drawbacks, and everything in between, basically. Which is topical locally, but it is also just something that we have to continue to face as the gun epidemic continues in America without any sort of action. So before we dive in, if you are new to the program, be sure to hit the subscribe button, help us grow, hit the thumbs up, and it will help us in the algorithm. All right. With all that prelude, the former president, twice impeached, Donald John Trump, I believe is his middle name, has now been indicted for a third time. Reminder, the first indictment was regarding the Stormy Daniels hush money payments. The second indictment was in regards to in New York State in particular. Or no, I'm actually mixing them up. The this is bad. I the second one actually is not even that. The first one is in New York. The second one was also federal under Jack Smith, and this third one is federal under Jack Smith. The second one was the documents case, not in New York. So, pardon me. You know, I like my presidents that haven't been indicted, but this is, and then so here before we dive into the third one, this is not the end of the road here. There is very likely the chance that between now and the end of this month, there will be a fourth indictment. So, you know, we'll discuss that in a little bit. But, you know, just so we're on the same page here, I will probably stumble over the order of these indictments again by the end of this month, because I don't write anything down. But this indictment coming out yesterday, August 1st, is in regards to Donald Trump's subversion of the attempted subversion of the 2020 election, specifically around January 6th, the kind of lead up to that, and everything that happened subsequent, basically, of November 2020, where he lied and he had co-conspirators that pushed this lie. And it's not about the lie, as we will talk about, but it is the intent to overturn and subvert the election, ultimately leading to January 6th, where he, allegedly, however you want to say this, encouraged an attack on the Capitol building where we're trying to hang the vice president. So, just average protesters, right? That's what they want you to believe. So, here we go. I will zoom in so you guys can see this when I pull it up. Again, apologies as always for all of the ads. See on this page. This is from Reuters. Which, by the way, Reuters and the AP are like two of the best if you are looking at like a media literacy and a media critique. The AP and Reuters are typically some of the best reporting, like, of facts. Just want to get facts, like, that's my opinion. But this is my opinion on where to get facts. But Reuters and the AP are very good at this. But this is from yesterday. Donald Trump was indicted on Tuesday for his wide-ranging attempts to overturn the 2020 election. The third time in 4 months that the former U.S. president has been criminally charged, even as his campaigns to regain the presidency next year. The 4-count, 45, so only 4 counts. Remember that the documents case had over 30 counts. 45-page indictment charges Republican Trump with conspiring to defraud the U.S. by preventing Congress from certifying Democrat Joe Biden's victory and to deprive voters of their right to a fair election. Then President Trump pushed fraud claims he knew to be untrue, which that's going to be a big crux of this case, is proving basically that he knew that this was fake. Pressured state and federal officials, including Vice President Mike Pence, which we know is a fact, because of that's the whole point of sending people to the Capitol, I'll continue reading, to alter the results and finally inciting a violent assault on the U.S. Capitol in a desperate attempt to undermine American democracy and cling to power, prosecutors said. Now, I want to point out this. This is where I'll say, remember that fourth indictment that I mentioned like a minute ago? Well, the pressure campaign is likely to bring a fourth indictment in the state of Georgia, where Trump, in an infamous phone call, basically, I believe he called the Secretary of State, if I'm not mistaken, or if it was maybe it was a more local countywide official that worked with the Board of Elections, one or the other. It might have been both, because I'm also confusing this with Arizona, which he also tried to do this in, by the way, which I don't know if they're actually. I don't know if like Jack Smith is looking into this or if any other prosecutors looking into this more detailed, but allegedly in Arizona, there's like the similar claim, or if not the similar claim, the same claim as what is happening in Georgia, where Trump infamously said, "I need you to find me 11,000 votes," on a phone call that was recorded. So this is not like a surprise that's going to be a big deal. This one is not a surprise. Knowing once like that first indictment came. Now, obviously, until the first one came, we didn't know if he was going to be held to account on all these things. It's kind of silly that the first one in New York, as I kind of alluded to earlier, was about the Stormy Daniels case, which is a hush money payment to him having a alleged affair. I suppose it's confirmed, but an affair with a porn star, where, which like in isolation as a private citizen, do you, I guess. But the hush money payment was so that he would not have the 2016 campaign impacted by it. That is the weakest of all of these cases. That is the least important when it comes to the political dynamics, when it comes to the democracy of the United States, when it comes to the sustained health of the country. Like, I don't really care that much about that one in comparison to the other two so far, and the third one that could come. And again, we don't know what could come next, right? The documents case is less important to me than this one, although there is more counts on that. There's more likelihood of like him being found culpable, liable, guilty, however you want to put it. I think it would be guilty because it is a actual criminal case. But it's likely, I think, that he will be found guilty in that case. I think it's likely that he will be found guilty in this case. But I think that this case is the one that is the most important in tandem with the Georgia findings, which I think also should be tied together with Arizona. And I don't know for a fact, but I think there were also things that were going on in Pennsylvania with pressuring, although we had a Democratic governor. So these things are all intertwined. The attempted overturning of an election is treasonous, if you ask me. Now, that's a loaded term, obviously. It's a legal term. To prove treason, that's a different standard. But in my opinion, it's very anti-American to try to overturn an election. As somebody that has lost 2 elections, one by 38 votes and one by 86 votes, I didn't try to overturn an election, even though I could, physically go in there into the Board of Elections and be like, stop the steal. I'm winning. Because I was winning by the way, in the first election I had up until like 3 a.m. So this is not a norm that we want to set in America. We don't want to set it for Americans. We don't want to set it for other countries, because we have no credibility in promoting democracy across the world when a potential president, a former president, and a potential future president is going around undermining our election systems and our elections with no evidence. Not a shred of evidence. The one key thing, that's why the reason why I still have this article up, one key thing of note is that this new one, has been assigned to U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan, who was appointed by Trump's predecessor, Obama. And Of course, the other federal case, a documents case, is in front of a Trump appointed judge, which, of course, presents its own challenges in its likelihood to hold up its standard. There is a potential for the documents case to be moved because I would argue that there is a conflict of interest between a case regarding somebody that literally appointed you to your position. It would be like, if my best friend, well, it doesn't have to be my best friend. If my neighbor thinks that, like, oh, he's the smartest guy about lifting, and I'm just gonna promote him to this position of like coach of the football powerlifting team, whatever. Obviously, it would be unfair for me to then be like giving out awards to the best lifter, and that neighbor's on the team, and they're not the strongest person, right? Like it's a silly analogy, but it's saying like there's obvious conflicts of influence, conflicts of interest with smaller examples than the president appointed you to a position. Like there are way less like conflicting positions or conflicting appointments or conflicting hirings than something like this that would not be able to fly, right? Like a superintendent being related to like a principal, or like a CEO hiring their kid to be like the CFO. I mean, like there's a lot of these things that are, it's not nepotism. This is different, but I'm trying to give examples in different ways where we would kind of think outside the box, be like, okay, well, obviously this is not like normal. There was some sort of conflict of interest. Or the person that gave me my first job, is it right for me then to be to go after them? It's not, right? Like there's a conflict of interest that immediately comes with that. And likely, hopefully, that will be moved. But Tanya Chutkin, who is the judge in this case, is also very well known for the prosecution and sentencing of multiple January 6th rioters, which is something that the Trump campaign and the Trump people are very aware of and afraid of, as they probably should be. So let's take a look at special counsel Jack Smith's press conference where he discusses this. And I will have to find the exact starting position because he is walking in the video, but bear with me for a moment while we find.
Jack Smith unveiled using the
with conspiring to defraud the United States, conspiring to disenfranchise voters, and conspiring and attempting to obstruct an official proceeding.
In the 45-page indictment, prosecutors described a sprawling, multi-state conspiracy built upon Trump's repeated false claims that Democrat Joe Biden's victory had been marred by widespread fraud.
If you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us.
According to the indictment, Trump ignored advisors and attorneys who told him the election was not fraudulent, including then Vice President Mike Pence.
These guys love to stand normally. Can we just take a look at that one more time? Like these guys just like they cannot be more relaxed, more comfortable. This is just a normal guy. Just a normal guy. They're super connected. They're not awkward at all.
President Mike Pence, White House lawyers, and the Director of National Intelligence. Instead, prosecutors wrote, quote, "The defendant pushed officials in certain states to ignore the popular vote, disenfranchise millions of voters, dismiss legitimate electors."
So that's what I need from there. Now, let's go to America's mayor. America's mayor, Rudolph Giuliani. And I'll tell you why this is important here in a second. Here is Rudy Giuliani talking to forget this guy's name. So it's something hilarious. Hopefully they show it during this on Newsmax. It's like Stenchville or something like that, Stankfield or something like that. And this is an interesting reaction from co-conspirator Rudy Giuliani.
Careful what you say. He still is the special investigator, the special prosecutor.
I kind of long ago,
yours and others' future. Go ahead.
Long ago,
Oh no, sorry, this is Eric Bowling. This is not Stenchfield.
Stop being careful, and I don't worry about the Jack Smiths of this world. I have a chapter in my book called "Stand Up to Bullies." So here's what I say to Jack
Must be a good bully. I mean, sorry, must be a good chapter.
Smith. After the Supreme Court threw out your case, which should have been a disgrace, and you should have gone and found another profession because you don't.
This is the guy calling Jack Smith a disgrace that was literally giving a press conference in front of a lawn care provider or a lawn care service, a landscape company in Pennsylvania, where he had hair dye dripping down his face with Sidney Powell saying that the election was stolen. I remember where I was when I saw that. I remember vividly seeing it on the TV. I remember exactly where I was watching January 6th and the couple days after, seeing these nut jobs lie about the 2020 election.
Don't belong in this one. This one will be your legacy.
I would probably venture to bet that this indictment being Jack Smith's legacy is probably not a bad thing for Jack Smith.
Violating the right of free speech of an American citizen. Never mind whether he was president or not.
So I'll take that quickly. Giuliani and other Republicans are saying that the indictment is within the is basically attacking Trump's freedom of speech. Because remember, Trump is allegedly inciting a riot in 2021 leading up to January 6th. This is not to say that he can't say, because it's explicit in the indictment and it is explicit from Jack Smith, that it is not about the specifics of what he said. He can lie. He's allowed to lie. But it is the incitement to action of trying to subvert democracy. It is the call to action of going to the Capitol, basically. It's not just this, but obviously the large part of this is going to the Capitol and trying to get Congress to not certify the election. And that's on top of him attempting to contact state officials to literally change the votes of their state. I will talk to you about this really quickly because I've never talked about this on the show before, but the GOP county chair in Bucks County, where I live, signed a letter trying to authorize fake electors, allegedly. The letter is public, but to try and change Pennsylvania's electors, because guess what? Donald Trump lost Pennsylvania. Because Donald Trump lost Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Arizona, he lost the election. So, and Wisconsin. So that is why these specifics are important. He has pressured people. He has look, I said this when it first happened. That riot was incited by the president. That's my opinion. Obviously, we will see how this plays out in court, but that is my opinion. I've said from the get-go, he basically said, we're going to go down there, we're going to march in there, and remember, this is where, I believe her name is Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony. Remember, this is under oath, testimony under oath, saying that she saw him like lunging towards the wheel and trying to steer it so that they can go to the Capitol, because the Secret Service wouldn't let him go to the Capitol, even though Trump wanted to go to the Capitol. Remember that this is Trump, who didn't even send out a tweet to stop until hours after the Capitol was broken into. I say this as somebody from Bucks County, where the single largest population of in one county I believe in the country of people that went to the Capitol are from. And again, Bucks County is not deep red. You know, remember that a certain person that owns a certain gym, maybe in Newtown, sent a bus full of people to the Capitol. I say this as somebody that in Doylestown had somebody that was in jail for their actions on January 6th, trying to say that they want to kill Nancy Pelosi, who owned a gym here in Doylestown that is now out of business. I mean, this is serious stuff. And January 6th to me is one, it's an insurrection. Two, more importantly, it's treasonous. It's anti-American. And like, yeah, we talk about all this, it's a platitude. It's rhetorical. Yeah, it is. But it's patriotism. Like, I actually give a crap about this country. And when I talk about making it better, it's not to just say like, oh, well, it's all just a play toy, basically. No. Like, the symbols of it, like, I would never, disgrace an American flag. I have one right over there. It's folded up. It's from my grandfather's funeral. Like, these are symbols that matter to me. It doesn't have to matter to everybody else. But as a patriot, seeing the Capitol being swarmed by mob trying to literally kill the vice president, who I don't support, by the way. I didn't support. I would never support. But it's not like I am wishing for him to get hanged at a gallows outside the Capitol. Like, this is where it's like there's a giant disconnect. So it's just okay. Like, oh yeah, oh, don't worry. It was just a couple of people. Yeah, as Shaz is pointing out in the chat, Pat Poprick, who is the GOP chair, is supposedly a fake elector. I don't know if that's the right terminology to say. I know that she signed a letter that basically was saying to support fake electors. So that, like, maybe the specifics are a little muddy, but like, and I could be wrong, you could be right. But it's one of those things where it's like, this is happening in like your town. Like, it's just, all these people are out there. They're fringe, but they, like Ms. Poprick, are empowered. So this is like, it's not just attacking free speech. It's protecting democracy, because if you let democracy fall, let's just say you're to my left, all right? If you're watching the show and you're to my left, you should care about the democratization of the whole country, because if you want to have a union, if you want to have worker co-ops, even if you want to go more extreme than that, if you wanted to, whatever, own the means of production to like the entire whatever, right? Like, you really want to go socialist route, whatever. You cannot do, anything like that. You cannot democratize your workplace. You cannot democratize anything if you don't have a democracy that represents you in your government first, because you'll be trampled on by the government. So a subversion of democracy from a, what I consider myself a social democrat, over to the left, you will never achieve any of your goals without the democratization of the government. From basically, I'll take, if DeSantis is all the way to the right, Trump slightly to his left, everybody, that is a moderate Republican, yes, as a voter, they still exist, all the way over, you should care about the democracy, because one, you're a patriot. Two, you should still want your voice to be heard. And I mean, is there a third reason? I don't know. Like, some of those folks probably still care about unionization. Some of those folks still want their voice to be heard in their workplace, right? If you continue to allow for the erosion of the systems that we have without saying, well, all right, there might be issues with them, but here's a solution. Instead, we have the right wing, the ultra right wing, the MAGA Republicans, the Republican Party, suggesting to tear it all down, basically, and say that the elections are illegitimate if our guy doesn't win. Anybody that is basically within the normal range of Republicans, a centrist, an independent, a Democrat, a liberal, a progressive, a social democrat, a socialist, I don't care what you call yourself, unless you literally believe in authoritarianism or fascism, if you care about the democracy that we live in. Oh, Connor, it's not a democracy, it's a representative republic. I don't care. It's a democracy. Republic's a form of democracy. Just, I'm preemptively saying that because I'm sure I'm going to get a comment on this saying that at some point. If you care about the republic, if you care about the democracy, if you care about this country, if you care about 100 years from now, 200 years from now, if you care about climate change, all this different stuff, right? All this matters. It boils down to, if you don't have a democracy, you're very unlikely to have any outcomes that you're going to like, unless you are the dictator, which, bad news for anybody watching this. You're not going to be the dictator. I got news for you. I'm not either. Don't worry. But yeah, the freedom of speech argument is absolute crap.
It could be anybody. It could be a homeless person. You don't get to violate people's First Amendment rights, Smith, no matter who the hell you are, or no matter how sick you are with Trump derangement syndrome. And this isn't the first time you've acted like an unethical lawyer. It should be the last.
Yeah, God forbid Rudy Giuliani is really concerned with the freedom of speech of homeless people. He is super concerned, actually. He is so concerned that he is slamming papers on the table. That shows you how amped up he is. He really cares. Here is, and this is a blind watch here. I'll be completely honest with you. I was curious when I saw this earlier, and we talked about, and I mispronounced his name. I've heard 2 different clips now that are confirming how to say his name. Vivek Ramaswamy, which, because if you haven't seen, and I maybe I should pull it up. Vivek Ramaswamy is a rapper, but he's also running for president, as we talked about last week, for the Republican nomination. He rapped and said that his name is Vivek, it rhymes with cake. So that's why I know how to say his name now, and that's a good way of putting it. But here is Republican candidate Vivek Ramaswamy talking about this indictment.
Here for me, if bottom the truth of the matter here, and well, the answer Vivek, is this is a politicized persecution.
Yeah, Vivek, I don't think the American people are going to know the truth unless there's a change in leadership. I mean, Republicans are staking the future on these investigations, and we're learning a lot, which is fantastic.
That's right.
The investigations, of course, here being, I only know this because I know exactly Laura Ingram's thought process, are the Biden crime family, which has had multiple hearings over the last couple of days. Remember, when the alien hearing happened, they were saying they're covering up the Hunter Biden laptop, the Biden crime family. Did you know that in 2015, Biden was calling his son Hunter Biden a lot? That was the hearings. And just so you understand, in 2015, Joe Biden's other son, Beau, died. So it is well reported that he was calling his other son, Hunter, and Hunter was calling him frequently after and around leading up to the death from cancer of Beau Biden. That's the hearings that Laura Ingraham and other Republicans are alluding to and hinting at. That's what's so important. The Biden crime family, which went after Burisma. Remember, what they're alleging of Joe Biden doesn't even make sense. Joe Biden pressured them to get rid of somebody that was favorable to Burisma, a prosecutor. Then Hunter Biden is put on the board of directors, or whatever the equivalent of it is. And that is like, I don't even know how to make a metaphor for this. It's like taking a baseball game where you know the umpire's only calling strikes for your pitcher. taking that umpire out of the game, replacing him with a neutral or even potentially an oppositional umpire, and then putting your son into pitch. Even though you know that the first umpire would have called everything that he pitched a strike. You know that it was more beneficial to you or your son monetarily to have the first person in there. There is no evidence. The whistleblower that they're talking about in this case doesn't exist, or if he does exist, they haven't heard from him in 3 years. And that's not a lie. That is not a joke. They literally cannot find him, which then they're going to say, well, that's because Joe Biden got to him. No, like, he is out there. They know he's out there. He's just not talking to them because he's not cooperating with them for whatever reason. Jim Comer, who says that they have tapes of the Biden family doing X, Y, and Z. They never heard them. They don't know if they're valid. They don't know if they're legitimate. But they were told that they exist, so they have to be real. It's like saying, oh, the tooth fairy's real because guess what? I got money under my pillow as a kid when I lost a tooth. Has to be real. And that's actually more evidence. That there is more evidence that the tooth fairy is real than what the Republicans are proposing about the Biden family in Congress right now. I'm not even joking about that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to dwell on this so much, but if there was something going on with Biden's family, the Hunter Biden, which, by the way, Hunter, like we talked about this in the past, Hunter Biden had a plea deal for what he had done wrong. Go after him for that. If Joe Biden did have all these, all this crime, go after him for it. We don't care. I mean, at least I don't care. I think that everybody should be held to the same standard of the law. We're not asking for special presentation or special treatment. I'm not asking for special treatment for myself, for Joe Biden, for Hunter Biden, for any Democrat. Under the law, we should all be equal.
But you got to beat them at the polls. And that means
Pokemon, go to the polls.
Early voting, ballot harvesting, 50-state campaign.
By the way, ballot harvesting is not legal in a lot of states. Specifically, in Pennsylvania, ballot harvesting is not legal. The overemphasis of ballot harvesting as a loss in states that no Republican was winning anyway, first of all. But even honestly, like, I personally don't see the illegitimacy of ballot harvesting in some cases. I could be, swayed the other way. I'm not dead set in my beliefs on that. But the overemphasis of ballot harvesting is a problem. No, I mean, like, more people vote in person than they do by mail. And they claim, Republicans claim in Pennsylvania, that Act 77, which created mail-in ballots here for no reason mail-in ballots, basically. You don't have to be out of the state. You don't have to be out of the country. Republicans created that law, and then it was signed by a Democrat, and then afterwards they claim it's fraudulent. Even though all of them won their elections, it's fraudulent for Trump. The Republicans walloped the Democrats in the state House and state Senate in 2020. And yet, somehow, it's rigged for Democrats. Because Democrats would only rig an election for Biden. They wouldn't rig an election if they were because they would get caught. They wouldn't do it for the Senate or Congress or the State House or the State Senate or their local county position or their local township position or their mayor's position. Like, it is so logically fallacious to even suggest that Democrats are rigging elections. It is just bonkers.
Getting more minority voters, that multi-ethnic coalition that you've talked about, that's where it's...
That last part's actually true. The Republican Party actually does need to diversify itself. Of course, Laura Ingram's a white nationalist, but besides that point, That actually is a real, that if they want to win, they actually do have to build a diverse support base.
That's how you drain the swamp. The investigations, everyone knows Biden's a crook now, and they apparently don't care.
Do they?
A lot of people don't care.
And that's why this has to be a landslide, 1980 Reagan-style landslide, Laura. That's why I'm in this race. We're going to have to bring young people along with us. That will make the difference between a razor-thin election and a landslide moral mandate.
He says bring young people with us, but every Republican candidate wants to cut Social Security for young people. None of them are supporting any sort of environmental reforms. None of them are supporting student loan forgiveness. None of them are supporting Medicare for all. None of them are supporting anything that young people support.
And if I am elected, you have my pledge, Laura, that we will open this kimono up, roll that log over, see what crawls out. From the Jeffrey Epstein client list to what's happened in these cases.
The Jeffrey Epstein client list, by the way, like, I know that like people on both sides want to see this stuff, and it should be, that's something that I believe like probably should be out there in public. But also, like, if that's your main priority, like that's the one thing he just listed as a priority, running for president. That's your main priority. You're kind of a clown.
We, the public, can handle the truth. It's not like you can't handle the truth. No, we can handle the truth.
Yeah, you should stop lying then.
Vivek,
there's no such thing as a noble lie. The public deserves to know.
So there you have that. That's their response to. That's the response to the Trump indictment. Is just say, but Biden. Vivek rhymes with cake. Okay, so that's what I have there. Let's move on. Do they? Mir asks, do they even know what young people support? They do. This is kind of maybe I'm being overly cynical. Republicans know what young people support. They just bet on young people not turning out. Republicans don't really care about reaching a consensus point. They don't really care about kind of changing their electoral strategies to be more appealing to young people. They just double down because historically their base votes more. Older folks who tend to vote Republican vote more. They're more reliable voters. Older white, frankly, older white men and women are just more likely to vote. And even though I think older folks are voting against their interests in voting for Republicans, they don't see it that way. So they vote that way. This is why I say I always draw the distinction. Do I think that every single, Republican voter or even Trump voter is like this ultra nationalist, like foaming at the mouth No, I don't. I do. Those people absolutely exist, and they are a non-insignificant part of the Republican base. But I don't think every single one of them is like that. It's just saying like, oh, well, I voted for Reagan. I love Reagan, and which, by the way, Reagan was a horrible president. Was one of the worst things to happen to America I would say he is the worst president up until Trump, maybe arguably worse. That the last Reagan, Bush, W. Bush, and Trump, they're all not good. Between them, the only one that like I could say was like, okay, is George H.W. Bush. And I'm saying this as a progressive, and I'm not saying he was good, but I'm just saying in comparison, he's the best of the four. And I will also remind you that no Republican has won in 2020, Joe Biden won the popular vote. In 2016, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. In 2012, Obama won the popular vote. In 2008, Obama won the popular vote. In 2004, George W. Bush won the popular vote. In 2000, Al Gore won the popular vote. So you have one out of all these elections, you have 6 elections. One of them was won the popular vote by George W. Bush, was won by a majority voted for the Republican. All right, well, let's go back two more elections. 2 more of Bill Clinton. So if you took 8 elections, in the last 8 presidential election cycles, one of them, the majority voted for a Republican. That's what I mean. Like the idea that America is so split and divided down the middle. It is not. It is the electoral system empowers a minoritarian party that is allowed to coalesce around this certain base that cares more about oppressing transgender kids playing sports than it does about protecting the environment. Like that is it's the culture war right now that is pinpointed right now. Because the thing is and I'm going on a tirade here. This has nothing to do with what I'm about to talk about, but I guess it kind of does. Because a electoral loss by someone like Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, where they were these policy first people, put back into a so it took the legs out. It took the legs out of like a progressive movement that was focused on something like wealth inequality as like a driving factor, and fixing that back into the 2015, 2014 culture war crap. So we end up dealing with not talking about policy again, not dealing with the existential threats, whatever you think when I say existential threat, we're not addressing it. Whatever I say, right? Like no matter what I'm telling you, if I said it's for me, it's like healthcare, wealth inequality, and the climate, whatever you think that is, we're not addressing it. If you think that like Greg Abbott is throwing razor wire into the rivers, into the, I think it's the Rio Grande, into the rivers, killed 2 people. If you think the border is like, and like I mean the border from the perspective of being like humane and supporting migrants, if you think that is an existential threat, we're not addressing that. If you think that people dying from lack of basic health care is an existential threat to an American society that should be better, we're not addressing that. We're addressing and fighting culture wars over and over and over again because we lost on the policy agenda and we lost in a primary. That's what's even worse about it. So they don't, back to the original question, Republicans don't care. Republican elected officials don't care about building a consensus from young people. They're betting against young people coming out to vote. And that's why you have to prove them wrong. Yes, and he did push. We talked about it this weekend. Don't get me started on trickle-down economics. We'll have to have a whole nother show if I get started talking on that. So here we go. This is actually for a final project. I'm writing about this for a final project in grad school. Is the student loan debt forgiveness failure? But as I was writing my outline this past weekend, this came out. President Biden opens a new student debt repayment plan. Here's how to enroll in SAVE. You may have heard about this. The Biden administration opened its new student loan repayment plan for enrollment through a beta application, giving borrowers an early shot at signing up for the program. The Saving on a Valuable Education Plan, or SAVE, is an income-driven repayment program which pegs a borrower's monthly payment to their income, lowering their financial burden. But IDRS, or income-driven repayment systems, have had some major pitfalls, such as allowing interest to snowball on borrowers' debt, which prompted the Biden administration to develop SAVE as an alternative. The new beta comes as student loan repayments are set to resume this fall after a 3-year pause due to the COVID health crisis, which, by the way, was the same authority that Joe Biden could have used to cancel student loan debt. I'll talk about that in a second. And a month after the Supreme Court blocked Joe Biden's plan to erase up to $20,000 in debt per student borrower, interest will begin accruing in September, with monthly payments are starting in October for borrowers. So you understand, this here is like the estimated monthly payments in SAVE. If you are one person and you make $60,000, your minimum payment's going to be that. $227. If it's $50,000, $143. It's $40,000, it's $60. Okay. Well, if you're a family of 4 and you make 60 grand, it's 0. If you're a family of 3, you make 50 grand, it's 0. Family of 2, $40,000, it's 0. And if you're by yourself, you make $30,000 and less, it's 0. So functionally, you could pay 0 if you make $30,000 by yourself, or if you're a family of 4, $60,000, and you pay 0. And these payments are basically like, if you do it over, like, I believe it's 10 years, you do the minimum payment for 10 years, which, by the way, you still have to qualify within these, in this bracket, then you will qualify after 10 years to have your debt discharged. Great. That's wonderful. Cool. Good job, right? This is awesome. And I'm like half being sarcastic. This is a good first step. This is good. But I will remind you, student loan debt is the one form of debt that you cannot discharge in bankruptcy. In fact, if you die, it gets passed on. 2, the authority in which Trump paused interest accruals, which, just briefly, the interest accruing happens every single month, where you are just not paying and not paying. Your interest is just bubbling and bubbling and bubbling. Your balance is going up. So even though you pay the minimum, sometimes the minimum actually has your balance going up. But Trump, using the authority given to him by the Higher Education Act, I believe of 1965, pauses student loan debt. Then they also use the HEROES Act of 2003 following 9/11, which allows for in a time of national crisis, the president has authority to, do these, existential, taking on these existential threats, basically, which is what the HEROES Act was used as the authority for Joe Biden's cancellation. Although the Higher Education Act actually gives him the authority to do it using the Secretary of Education. All of this is to say, if Joe Biden and the Biden administration want to get serious about student loan cancellation and having it legally more bulletproof, pass student loan debt forgiveness, cancel. It should have, in my opinion, should be at least $20,000 per person. But I support full cancellation of all student loan debt, because guess what? The money has already been spent. It is already gone. The school's already got it. And the money that we owe to who? Who do we owe the money to? Oh, the government. You mean the government that controls monetary policy? Oh, that's the international reserve currency. And when we force people to pay back their loans, we may or may not cause a recession. And we may or may not enable millennials and Gen Z to get homes. If they don't have homes, they have to get rent, but rent is higher now. Rent's higher than mortgages. So if they can't get rent, can't get a mortgage, they live at home, how are they supposed to start a family? They're not starting families, population's going down, which a lot of people complain about. You don't have people in schools. You have lower tax bases. I mean, there's a lot of problems here. Now, am I being maybe a little drastic? Maybe. We know that home ownership in the millennial generation is abysmal. We know it's impossible for Gen Z. It's all tied together. And we will see, because as the interest rates keep going up, the Fed keeps raising interest rates because they're trying to snuff out inflation, which inflation is at the lowest it's been in 2 years, but they are still pushing it because inflation, and we talked about this weeks, maybe months ago, inflation and unemployment theoretically have inverse relationships. So in a attempt to lower inflation, they are admittedly trying to increase unemployment. Even though unemployment, which you may not believe this, in this economy, unemployment is at historic low, which is good. It is below what is considered full employment. That is a good thing. But this student loan forgiveness plan is fine for now. But a real solution is passing, or not even passing, using the executive order, using the authority under the Department of Education to cancel student loan debt if you want to be serious about this. If you're not LARPing, you're not listening to, the Larry Summers people that are on MSNBC or not MSNBC, CNBC talking about, the stock price this, the stock price that, while they're sitting on a freaking yacht, or they're sitting, in paradise while we're all grinding away. Then if you want to be serious and you want to win 2024, this is a nice thing to do for young people. I know that I would feel I felt a lot better in 2022. I mean, I'm obviously a very strong progressive and a Democrat, but I felt a lot better voting in 2022 because of the things that Joe Biden was doing. The Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act, the student loan forgiveness, the American Rescue Plan. All of these things are super important, and they were passing things that are like the CHIPS Act, bringing manufacturing jobs to America. It has no effect to me, but that's something that I believe in, and I actually really like, and bringing these blue collar jobs back into America and revitalizing a middle class that has been overlooked. And as Jameer has talked about, because of trickle down economics, that doesn't benefit the workers. You know what they say, though, Jameer? In the end, the workers win. Which I think we have to make that true. I hope that's true. For right now, it's not, but I hope that's true. Last thing I want to talk about here today is this. This is an old article from The Patch. The Patch is a local newspaper here. Central Bucks proposed, and by Central Bucks, it means the school board, proposes adding student resource officer at West, CB West, which is a high school. That's all we really need to see from this article, but I just wanted to prove, why am I talking about this? What does this matter? Well, it matters because a student resource officer is an armed police officer in the schools. Okay? And I'm happy to hear your opinion in the chat. Have it. But in my opinion, or before we go into my opinion, let's just describe what has happened. In Central Bucks, which everybody that's listening to the show knows is an absolute nightmare of a school board right now, supposedly unanimously supported bringing in of a student resource officer to CB West. They have one already at CB South, which is another high school, and I believe they have one now at CB East, or they are getting one through Buckingham Township. This was approved to have one at West now, unanimously, and then today, I'll pull up, friend of the show, she might be in chat, Jordan, took this video from the commissioners, which I believe this is not the chief of police, but at least not. I don't think this is not the chief of Central Bucks Police, but this is a police officer talking about the student resource officers and saying that the school board approved it.
Is paying for everything.
School board is paying for everything.
They have basically said whatever the cost is, they've for lack of a better phrase, they've pretty much left an open checkbook.
An open checkbook. This is look. This is the party of fiscal responsibility, allegedly, right? Because this is a 6-3 majority. This is not modern monetary theorists that have unlimited amounts of resources. This is the people that just gave a $90,000 raise to the superintendent, saying we have a blank check to bring in a student resource officer, an armed police officer, into the school. Now, am I totally opposed to this idea? Well, first of all, it's been approved. Like, there will be a armed police officer in the high school. Am I like totally devastated by that? No, I'm not. Do I think that it 100% should go through? No, I don't necessarily think it should 100% go through. But there is a fine line to say, okay, well, as actually CB is pointing out, chat, if we live in a society now where one party wants to do absolutely nothing about gun violence, is it safer to have an armed guard? I mean, for lack of a better word, I mean, it's not really like a police officer at that point. It's just an armed guard, right? In the school. And I'd say it depends. We haven't, and I don't even like want to say anything like that, but we haven't had one of these situations in the high schools. We've had bomb threats when I was there. We've had bomb threats. We've had certain things. We've had close calls. But I personally don't believe that an officer in the school prevents a mass shooting event. However, assuming that there is no direct inaction or there is no direct negligence by an officer that is in the school, a student resource officer is likely or has the potential to at least mitigate a situation in which something like this arises. Is that the best that we can do? Maybe. And that's why I see in the chat a lot of left-wing hysteria about this kind of thing. Sorry, lefty allies. The nuclear answer is yes. So this is what I mean. If we're living in just right now, yeah, I actually don't think it's the wrong. I don't think it's the wrong answer. I'll just say that. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a bad thing that we live in a society that it is their job, that it has to be someone's job to basically stand patrol where kids go to learn to stop an armed maniac. In the chat, I also think their duty to stop shooters should be explicit and not up to debate. Yeah, so this is the thing. I actually had a conversation about this earlier. This is where I get annoyed with this, because if there's a mass shooting, if there's a shooting in general, cops aren't liable criminally or civilly for crime committed by another person. And they shouldn't be, right? Cops are there to protect and serve, right? However, if a mass shooting happens, gun manufacturers are also not liable. When you hire a student resource officer, and it is their job, functionally, it is their job to stop this from happening, which I don't believe that they are capable. I don't believe, unless they stop every kid, they have metal detectors, they do, I don't think that it is physically possible to stop and prevent 100%. Even if you have an armed, this is the nihilist, this is a sad reality. To stop one of these things with just one officer, it's not possible. It is there, that person is there to mitigate the damage. And this is why, like, you look at Uvalde, you look at Parkland, it is direct negligence from certain officers where they don't go in to do their job that leads to people getting killed, and that's where there's potential liability. Now, if it is their job to do this, which it is, you know, like you're saying, it needs to be explicit. If it is their job and they do not take action when that like job, you know, comes to that they have to go and do their job, then there should be significant repercussions. So I think that that's like the compromise here, because the reality is that one party in this country wants to do absolutely nothing to reduce gun violence. They don't think that guns are the problem. So if you live in this world where a 14-year-old has access to a gun, like a 16-year-old could legally buy a gun in certain places in the country, then yeah, maybe we should be a little concerned about this. And I don't like the precedent of having a police officer in the school either. Like, I wouldn't have liked, I didn't even like seeing like people patrol in the hallway as like a hall monitor, right? But it's just like, I don't want kids to be unsafe in a school. I don't think that this is the answer to make them safe. But I don't think it's the wrong answer either. So this is where this nuance in this debate, and this is like being an honest broker in this and saying like the outrage of saying, yeah, okay, well, saying we have a blank check to do this, that's not a good, when you barely gave raises to your support staff, you have like record numbers of openings. That's not the smartest thing to say. We have a blank check to bring in a police officer after giving a 40% raise to your superintendent, but your teachers are struggling. That's not a good look. But at the same time, there is some strategy in mitigation. And again, we haven't had one of these. Hopefully we don't. But I don't believe in this Western, you know, shootout style. Like, we're just gonna, good guy with the gun's gonna stop the bad guy with the gun. That's not reality. The schools that we're talking about, by the way, are gigantic. So what, like, this is where it's like, well, okay, one's not going to be enough then. Do you hire 3? Do you hire 5? Do you have a whole police force? And I know that sounds, you know, hyperbolic. It's really not. I mean, some of these schools have 3 stories. You know, CB South is gigantic. This is just, we're just talking about one school district now. Imagine you have a whole county. Imagine you have the elementary schools, because guess what? Not just high schools that these are a problem with. This is where it's like, it's like addressing poverty. If you don't address poverty, then you have all of these other things that come up down the line. You have food insecurity, you have housing insecurity, you have crime, you have lack of health, like, you know, public health, not just lack of healthcare. You have lack of public health because then you have people that are getting sick, they're out in public, they're living on the streets, they have no food, they get sick, it gets out there, and it's like, but if you address poverty, you can address these other ones, or at least alleviate some level of these other issues. If you don't address gun violence, if you don't address mental health problems, which are both 2 things, which, by the way, there are certain people that are running for school boards that believe, that are supported by Moms for Liberty, that believe that there should not be mental health services or healthcare services in schools. So if you don't believe that mental health services should be provided in schools, and you don't believe that they should do anything on guns, then yeah, of course the only thing that you can do is have police officers in the school. Of course. It's the only other, you need an army basically at that point, because If you just believe that anyone should have a gun, then yeah, it's the same. This is the same freaking argument. Cops are afraid to be on the street in certain places because they think everyone has a gun. Well, guess what? A lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people do have guns. So it does make a cop's job extremely hard for that reason. So when we talk about like, oh, well, we want to make the job of a cop easier. Oh, no, you just want to take away our Second Amendment right, which you didn't have that explicit Second Amendment interpretation, which is not an originalist interpretation until 2007 in the Heller case. See, this is where it's like they throw all this stuff out. They just throw out anything that they use as a basis beforehand because it is not politically expedient to them. If you believe in the principles of the Constitution, of the Bill of Rights, and a real interpretation, a living, breathing interpretation, not everyone should have a gun. Not everybody should have a gun. And if you don't want to have the right testing, if you don't want to have the right licensure, if you don't want to have the insurance, if you don't want to have liability, if you don't want to have criminal culpability, if you don't want to have gun manufacturers having liability for crimes which their product, which is designed to kill people, when it kills people, you don't want them to be liable, then yeah. The only thing you can do is have armed police officers at the school. That is the sad reality of this. And that's why it's like, it's not like a clear cut, like, yeah, of course, just get like a bunch of them. Because one, it's a limited resource. And two, we don't know how effective this is. But as pointed in chat, schools are soft targets. There's no reason to abdicate security measures because we dislike police. Yeah. The thing is that also then, like, well, to what extent do you actually have to bump them up beyond what they are? What security measures are there that don't exist now in the schools that need to be in place? Are metal detectors really what we need? Because there's a lot of things that are metal that you go through there. Do we need to like have it like TSA? I don't know. That's not set in stone. There's not like a proven, from what I can understand, because it seems that America is the only country that deals with this. There's not a proven like way to solve this yet. When there is, I mean, I think there's potential solutions, but until we come up with like solid ones, I think you kind of have to just support this. It's frustrating, but in a society where there's a mass shooting every single day, it's better to have somebody there to mitigate it, at least at a bare minimum, at least mitigate it, if not stop it. And I hope to not have to test that theory. That's the reality. So I think that's an interesting little tidbit. We have never really discussed that on the show before. So because of the news, it happened today, of the approval. I just found that something to at least discuss as an interesting topic. So with all that being said, that's all I have for you today. If you enjoyed the program, you can hit the subscribe button and you can hit the thumbs up if you liked it. You can listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts, like the audio versions. You could support the show on patreon.com/Greater Society Media. You can follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, and on TikTok at Greater Society Media. And you can follow me on X at Con O'Hanlon. And yeah, I think that's all. You can join the Discord server by clicking the link in the description box below the video that you are watching, or the audio version of the show that you are listening to. But until then, maybe the twice impeached, thrice indicted president will become the twice impeached, 4-time indicted candidate for president by next week. And still, he's somehow leading in the Republican polls. But that's a topic for another day. But until then, guys, stay safe. I'll see you next time. Peace.